Before we jump into the episode today, I want to share something with you from my heart. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really can't tell you how much your support means to me. We've been doing the podcast now for almost 4 years. I can't even believe it. And I'm so grateful for each and every single one of you that listens, shares an episode with your friends, sends me a DM or a text message letting me know how an episode resonated with you or any aha moments. Seriously, I couldn't be more grateful to be able to create this podcast. It has been such a blessing in my life, and I love hearing the ways it's been able to provide value in yours as well. One thing you might not know is how much work it takes to be consistent with a podcast. In fact, did you know that the majority of podcasts don't make it past episode number 10? And we are well beyond that. And it's just a lot thinking of the episodes, recording them, editing them, managing the guests, making sure that everything runs smoothly and gets uploaded consistently and regularly. And so that's why I have created an amazing opportunity for you to support the podcast monetarily. And in exchange for that, you will get exclusive premium subscriber content. So for as little as $3 a month, you can become a premium subscriber of the podcast. And every month I will upload new voice-guided workouts and breathwork meditation audio for you. So that way you can work out with me, coaching you in your ears. You can also take a moment to reduce your stress and relax and come down and ground down with one of my breathwork audios. So if that is on your heart to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month to become a premium podcast subscriber, I can't tell you how much that means to me and the growth of this podcast. I appreciate you. If you're interested, click the link in the description, become a premium podcast subscriber, new content every month, and while supplies last, I'll send you an exclusive podcast coffee mug so you can have your self-love and sweat coffee every morning. I appreciate you. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, break down barriers, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, London Souza. Hey friend, it's me, London Souza, online lifestyle transformation coach. I help people all over the world just like you who know they are meant for more, get their mind right and their body tight, and go from crazy busy to crazy happy. And hey, if it's our first time meeting, welcome. So happy to have you. And if you've been with us for a while, it's so great that you're here too. I'm really excited to share this episode of the Self-Love and Sweat podcast with you. Hey, I want to tell you quickly about 2 ways that you can get connected beyond the podcast to uplevel your health, your life, your fitness, reach your goals, but also support the podcast as well. So the first option is our Self-Love and Sweat monthly members only meetup. We meet up on the last Saturday of the month on Zoom for 90 minutes to cover some important topics, to answer your questions, and then to also do a workout together. It's a great way to have that support, have that accountability, get supercharged, and get reminded that there are other people all over the world on this journey of self-love and sweat, and you don't have to do it alone. You can join your first month for only $1 using code SELFLOVE1 at checkout, and then it's $27 a month after that. So you go to lifelikelondon.com/monthly, use the code SELFLOVE1 at checkout to try us out, test it out for only $1 for your first month, and then you can be on board to listen to the podcast, join up on the meetups, and just really feel like you're connected and thriving on this journey to reach your goals. The second option is our Strong at Home for Women 8-week dumbbell-only workout plan. We have women all over the world getting stronger from the inside out right at home, right? So we're ready to take action to get stronger despite the circumstances of the world. And we know that we're not about to do that alone. So embark on this 8-week journey with us. You can go to lifelikelondon.com/strong at home. You can pick up your 8-week plan. And the exciting thing is that every 8 weeks, we open it up, myself and my co-coach, for VIP all access coaching with us. So not only do you get the plan, but you get Zoom fireside chats with us. You get an exclusive way to chat with us anytime so you can ask your questions, share your progress. And we're always continuing to stay connected and motivate and inspire each other on our journey to get stronger, no matter what that means for us. So if you know that you're meant for more, you're ready to get stronger from the inside out, and you're just like, yes, I need a plan and some structure, something to tell me what to do. I know I'm ready, but I need that coaching. I can't do it alone. We are here for you. You can go to lifelikelondon.com/strong at home, pick up the plan, figure out when our next VIP all access registration is opening so you can get that support and guidance. And the third thing, I said there was two, but the third thing is you can do both. You can join us for those monthly meetups. You can be there for the 8-week program. You know, this coaching and this support is here for you. We want to get you real results that last so you never have to start over again. And so you guys are awesome. Enjoy this episode. Get connected. Self-love and sweat, friends. Our next guest, Jen Scotney, has always loved to be active, from growing up running around the Peak District Hills to playing football with the boys and cycling with her family. Leaving school and heading off to university, she left sports and studied to be a barista, and then worked as a human rights lawyer for children in prison for 14 years. She worked 80-hour work weeks, traveling across the country, working with some of the most complex criminal cases in the UK. After the loss of her father and brother in quick succession, in 2009, she started running as a way to deal with the pain. She gradually built up to running some of the toughest ultramarathons in the UK. She has podiumed at the 190-mile Northern Traverse race and twice at the winter 112-mile Spine Challenger event. She has also completed ultramarathons across the world, including a multistage desert race in Peru. She left law in 2019 after burnout from the long hours and cases, and now is a running coach and yoga teacher. She is also training as a mountain leader, which is a qualification to take groups into mountains. She has also been a guest host on the Wild Ginger Running YouTube channel since January. She is vegan and has been since spending the UK lockdowns in the Peak District with husband Marcus, who's also an ultra runner, and beagle Sherlock. Welcome to the podcast, Jen Scotney. So happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, the dog might interrupt at any moment. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you know what? Here on the podcast, I don't really care. We do minimal edits. We just talk. We go with the flow. If the dog wants to give his input, so welcome, Sherlock. So that was like a really beautiful, yet, oh my gosh, you've done so much. I said this to you before we started, like you're always relentless and going after like the big feats. And I know there's other people doing all the things, but yeah, in your own words, like what have you been up to and what does that look like? And yeah, just kind of expand on that a little bit.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, when you read it out, there's so much in there, but actually it's happened over so many years that you're kind of just living in it and it just is your normal. So other than when I have had a race that maybe has been a longer distance and I've had to push myself or have those doubts of, I don't think I can run that far. It's all just been fairly normal.
Yeah, it's your thing. It's your thing.
Yeah. It's been
and you're just like, yeah, so relaxed, go with the flow, bubbly. I remember, so for those listening, like Jen and I met in Athens, Greece. I was hosting an event for a corporate event for a big company, bringing their employees together to run the marathon in Athens. And then Jen was a guest speaker there. Her and I had coordinated before the event, but something happened like with flights and things got delayed. And you just like rolled in a few minutes before it was time to step on stage and do your interview with me. I was just like, hey, like, we're like, nice to meet you. Here's what we're going to go over a little bit. You're like, I'm here for it, ready to go. You had had your dress on and you're just like, you're just so, down to earth and awesome despite, like really going through a ton and, and then also like pushing your limits. So how did you get that kind of, just bubbly, laughy, ultramarathon-y personality?
I guess it was always there, but I think for me, a big part of it was my training as a lawyer, because I was really shy at school. Like I probably was like how I am now to my close friends, but I hated anything that drew attention to myself. Any public speaking just terrified me. But when I started at university and you just suddenly, as a lawyer, you just have to put yourself, we had to talk in front of everybody. And then I guess kind of years of being a lawyer, I was in hearings in prisons, and it wasn't quite like the criminal courts where you'd get full disclosure and know what everyone was going to say. So much just happened and you just had to roll with it and pretend this was all in the plan or anything like that. So I think, 14 years of that honed my skills of, I'll just go with it.
Put a smile, pretend like it was all planned and bring it all together. Right. So how did you first get into running? I know it was a form of, therapy and motivation for you, but how did you first start?
I mean, I did used to run as a child, and my dad was a runner and my mum as well. But my dad used to do these local fell races. They're races that we should just find in the Peak District or kind of Lake District and certain parts of the hillier parts of the UK. And so I did used to watch him run. We used to do them as well. I used to run at school. And then I just completely lost sport. Like at university, I did play in the football teams, but then I just lost it. So there was just this big gap. I had done some more kind of hill walking and hiking with one of my partners for a few years. So I always kind of had a bit of a base fitness. But I just decided to get a dog. And it's Sherlock really that got me out, even though he hates running now. He's like the laziest dog ever. But I was working from home at that point, and it was just unhealthy. I was spending, getting up 7 a.m. I'd be at my desk and I'd still be there at 11 o'clock at night. And I wouldn't always have, unless I had to go out for work, I wouldn't really leave the house. So I just thought, I'm going to get a dog and get some fresh air. And that's, and that just coincided at the time. It was just after my dad and my brother died. So it just felt like things needed to shift. And I just started walking with my dog and then just running the flat bits. Like I had no running kit. I was just in like walking stuff. And then eventually I think I must have got some early running gear and made it more into runs rather than this is a walk with a bit of run. But that's how I started.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think a lot of people can relate to even what you said, like waking up, going to your desk and being there all day. But this, of course, was well before 2020, well before all of that. But I think we can, you get that feeling of you're just like at home, at your desk. And sometimes I feel that too, because I'm like, despite my active lifestyle, active programs, whatever, I do spend a lot of time online sitting, and those hours can just. And so, thanks to Sherlock, you got outside and got moving. But like, Jen, it's so different of getting up and going for a run, right? And like going from like 2 minutes run, 1 minute walk, and like doing your couch to 5K to like ultra marathons, running on mountains with all your gear on your back and like setting up camping gear and probably like have a barbecue in there and, roast your vegetables and keep going. I can just imagine your setup, right? So like, when did you make that shift of like, okay, it's not just running, it's like ultra full day, marathon running?
I didn't just leap into, I didn't even know they existed when I started running. I had said, my friend was doing a 24-hour challenge where you had to walk 100K. Like she was walking it. And I think she'd asked me to be her support crew but it was coincided when my dad was really ill. So I didn't do that. But I spoke to her after and she was like, and some people ran it. And I was just like, no, she's got that wrong. People can't run 100K. Like my dad had run road marathons, and in my head, that's just where it finished. That's the limit to the human body. So I guess I was kind of intrigued by that, but Yeah, I entered local races. I think my first race was I might have done like more kind of 10K and some sort of 7 miles or so. And then I think just through social media on Twitter, I was following some guys that did like long distance walking. And then I suddenly found the world of ultramarathons, which has exploded in the last few years. So there definitely weren't as many runners or races then. So it was a little harder to seek out. But it just fascinated me. I just had no idea that a human could run more than a marathon.
I know. The furthest I've done is half marathons. And so when I think about even the marathon distance or ultra marathon, it's like, yeah, go on with your bad self. But I remember too, like when I first met a girl named Jamie, I forget her last name. Maybe it'll come to me in a second. But anyways, so it was like over 10 years ago, and she did ultra marathons. And I remember like I had never heard of that before. And for a while, she was the only ultra marathoner that I really like knew, And now, yeah, I feel like that industry, or I don't even know industry, but like race, bracket, if you will, has exploded. The industry or the interest in it is really big. And I feel like maybe even I'm just more drawn to people like that. So I'm reading more stories about it and more interested in articles of things like that. But how have you seen more people, get into this sport since where you were?
There's just so many. And there used to be like in this country, there's some old races that have been around for decades, ultramarathons, but they just weren't that many. Like you could name them all, really. And but now you could do 3 a weekend. There's just so many that have popped up. So yeah, you can just see it in the number of races and the number of people doing those races as well.
Do you like that it's growing?
I do. I think it's fantastic because I remember like the excitement of doing my first few ultra marathons, this kind of wonder in that no way can I keep running for 40 miles. Like my first one was 50K. So or maybe at like 31 miles. And then I did one a few months later that was 40 miles. And you keep pushing yourself. And I love it. It's such a safe way to kind of push those limits. And I just feel like if you're doing something that you just thought was impossible, even if it's running a race that's, in a very controlled way, it does go into other areas of your life. And you start thinking, well, what if maybe I could do this, or maybe I could take this risk. So I think it's a great thing that people are finding this world.
Yeah, totally. People sometimes ask me that about fitness and working out and just kind of the overall. And I'm like, no, it makes me so excited because like, I know how good I feel, when I'm working out and eating healthy and like, showing up full out, that like, I want other people to feel that. Like, I don't care if it's growing, like, let it grow.
Of course. Let it grow. Yeah. More the merrier.
Yeah. So when we met, it was 2019, right? And that's when you first left you were starting to leave your law job and transition into...
Well, yeah, no, there was a crossover when I had...
I feel like it was like just a few months prior to our interview or something. You had finally made the decision. You were about to switch into, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, burnout is real. What did that look like for you? And, how did you know it was just really time to shift?
Well, I mean, with hindsight... I was years into burnout. It started way before the running, way before the ultra marathons. And for me, it started with just tired, like just as if I'd had a really bad night's sleep. And I had started sleeping worse, but it was a kind of constant, just tired. And the immediate thing I did was, I have to work through this. I need more sugar. I need more coffee, and just really kind of plow through. But there were times when I would be almost like pinned to the bed with the fatigue. It would come in, kind of creep up over weeks. And then I'd have maybe a week where I was just in bed. And it's really hard when you're like, obviously I had such a huge workload, but I was also self-employed. So I didn't have anybody that I could just give these files to. So you're trying to rest, but you're also conscious that the more you rest, the more your work's piling up. So that was just a really dangerous predicament for me, because I was then forcing myself to get up and work through it. But I then kind of, it's, I wasn't taking enough holiday. So then maybe I'd be a bit more like, okay, well, I am going to take a week off and try and start working so many weekends. And it would come in waves. So I'd then get better, things would be fine. And then actually I started running like after I'd got I had my first period of a crash, I'd call it, like with the fatigue. But then it would creep up again, the same thing would happen. And I'd also find that I was getting quite anxious during those times, like, fearing the worst, which really isn't my normal personality. So that would be just kind of avoiding emails and thinking everything was awful and I was going to, all these bad things had happened and they hadn't. And so, yeah, that kind of happened a few times and then I'd get myself out of it. But it was April 2019. It was actually my stepson had come and he'd got some awful cold kind of virus. And I got ill from that. I was trying to fight it off. I got ill and it just floored me. And then I spent weeks in bed. And I just thought, I just can't keep doing this. I just can't. And at the time, like I was dealing with some really, really hard cases. And the backdrop of like me working in law for 14 years was that it's all publicly funded work. And every year we were getting more and more cuts because it's not politically advantageous to give money to, murderers and sex offenders and things. So my funding was getting cut and I was just taking a pay cut every year. And I was starting to struggle to make a living. And I just got to the point where I just thought my health isn't worth this. Like losing my health is not worth this job. And that's when I made the decision to quit.
And how long did you make the decision, like, before then you implemented it? So I know when I stepped away from career, it's like you think about it and then you're like, you do it.
Actually, when I said that, I just thought there was another time a few years, like 8 years before, where I tried to leave and that hadn't worked out because part of me doing a training course, like another degree, was with my partner supporting me, and then we split up. So there was that happened a few years before. I'd forgotten about that. But for me, yeah, so in April I got ill and I started looking for jobs straight away. And by July I'd quit. Well, I'd finished being a lawyer, although I still had ends to tidy up for months. But I'd started my new job in July.
Awesome. That's so great. And that's such a good feeling. It feels like,
yeah, I mean, it did. But then there's also, I think there's just, you have so much
thing.
Oh, sorry, we lost.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. No problem. Did you feel, I don't know if it cut off, so I'll just say it again. Like if you ever felt like a weight had been lifted or you felt like a little bit, less suffocated and anxious after that.
Yeah, I definitely did. But it was also quite a big change as well. I think, you lose your identity that you've had for so long as a lawyer. And suddenly I was working in PR and I was commuting into an office and I struggled with that because what I found was that I stayed with that fatigue. Like my health didn't recover in a few months like I thought it would. And I still would say that I'm not fully recovered from that last crash. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with a nutritionist at the moment to try and just get that final bit back. But yeah, no, I struggled, like just that whole change, and I wasn't feeling at my best, but then you're having to go to an office and kind of meet hundreds of new people. And so it was difficult to deal with that amount of change. But then there were times where I didn't have all the paperwork burden of being a lawyer, and I didn't have to, I could just book a holiday and know that I could take that holiday. Whereas as a lawyer, if something crops up, I was cancelling holidays and things like that. So there were many times where I saw the advantages, but in the end, and then I realized that I didn't actually like commuting or being in an office. So I've left that job now. So there's been another change, but it was really valuable to know, it was that step I needed to get out of law. And it also showed me that I'm not suited to an office and a 9 to 5 commuting job.
Yeah, fun things to find out, right? I'm right there with you. But yeah, it's just that was that next best step in the right direction. And even realizing like, hey, okay, there's, some good in this. I don't have to, do all this paperwork and spend long hours or ask, or not take holiday and, come back to work when I say I'm on vacation. I know what that feels like too. So then from there, you switched from PR into yoga instructor. Is that where you transitioned into and where you're at now?
Yeah, I probably signed up for my yoga teacher training, which is something that I had dreamed of for years and years and years and just never taken the plunge. Mostly because when I was a lawyer, I couldn't get the time off to do it. So I had looked at it, years ago. But yeah, probably just after I saw you, I signed up for that. And now I'm a running coach as well, which has been amazing.
Yeah, I love that. So running coach and yoga seems very much more in line with that there. But I love the topic of, kind of that transition of switching careers or that transition there. And I feel like, when you do it once, at least that's how, I feel. And I've had a conversation with a guy on my podcast, Mike Usis, which released while we're recording this week was that episode, but talking about like pivoting and making change in career and like knowing when it's that time to just like make a move. And then because of that first one, like it's kind of not easier, but you're just like ready to make that next one. So it was like, okay, I jumped into this career, not exactly what I wanted, faster to make that change there. So what does that kind of transition process look like for you? And then like, what have you learned from those changes and your resilience there?
Yeah, it's about that word change. And for me, there's always some resistance. I think that's a human nature, isn't it? That we don't want change. And so it kind of, that resistance crops up in really strange times and places. But ultimately, I kind of knew it's the hardest bit is immediately as you've done it. So it was that kind of getting all the clutter of my law career kind of out of my house. It was doing my accounts. It was meeting all those people. Like I always had in my head, this is the roughest part and it's going to get easier. And you just have to ride it out. So I think I am now like more able to embrace that change and that discomfort and just ride it out.
Yeah. Enjoy the ride. I mean, that's the only other alternative is like not enjoying it.
Yeah. And you know, and you know that if you don't do anything, nothing's going to change. But there's always, that's a kind of, sometimes that's the easiest bit as well, or it feels easy at the time to just be like, okay, I'll just put up with this and I'll enjoy myself when I retire. But you can't do that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I want to, I mean, of course, we don't always enjoy every single thing you need to do, but for the most part, we don't want to wait until then to enjoy. Yeah, I just, no, not happening. Not happening for 2020, for, such a year where everything, we all know what our world transitioned into. How did running and ultramarathon running and just like sport in general, movement, how did that really support you? And even yoga, like during that time?
Yoga was, I started my yoga qualification like a few weeks after the UK went into their first lockdown. And I was still working in my PR job then, but we were told that we were going to be on furlough. So it was kind of like you didn't turn up to work and the government were compensating you for that. And so I suddenly, like, it felt like a great sign. Like for years, I'd wanted to do my yoga qualification and I never had time. And I was very concerned that I'd had to use up work holiday to do my yoga course. And maybe that would be quite tiring and stressful on my body. But here it was like the day that I started my yoga course was the day I was put on furlough and I knew that I would have 6 weeks off. In the end, I was made redundant during that time. But that was a great push for me because it just kind of takes, I wanted that, but I didn't quite have the courage to do it at that point. So that was a really good for me. But so yoga yeah, it was really, really good during that time for me, because I still didn't feel like I was 100%. So I didn't want to push my body. Like, I had a race booked in, 100-miler in January, and I was forcing myself to kind of try and train for it, but not in a very, like, I just knew I wasn't 100%. And then you think, well, why are you doing this? Like, this is not nourishing for your body. This is not how you're going to thrive. You know, there's been times where running has just been so positive for me. It's just helped me so much with just accepting myself, accepting my body, just being so positive. But if you can take that too far. And I just felt like I was pushing too much. So I've run during like last year and into this year, but I haven't trained. I haven't been hitting like these sessions, these miles. I've just run when I feel like it. And that's been great. And I had another race, which was due, I'd booked in ages ago. You kind of think, oh, I'll be better by then. I'll be fine. So I had another race in June, which was in Norway, but thankfully that's cancelled for me because of the international travel. And again, I just think, of course, that was a stupid thing to do. Like, you're not 100%, so why try and train? Like, it's just, that's not what my body needs at the moment. So for me, it's just been a lot of walking. I go swimming a lot, like in the rivers and the little pools around here, and yoga as well. So yeah, it's been good. Like, there's just hasn't been that pressure because so many races have been called off. I mean, it's been hard as a coach because there's a lot of my athletes are driven by races, and it's been kind of quite hard to manage when races do get called off. But personally, it's been fine.
Yeah. You know, I didn't even think of that, but you're so right. As a running coach and people being inspired by a race deadline or date, but still wanting to be goal driven, but somehow it's a little bit like, challenging. Like, same for me. Like I kind of always have done like a half marathon or two a year. So I was always just kind of like running, but not, not too rigid with time, but also had like a setup and training and flow. But then without a, race deadline, I was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to run when I want to. And I love to move in general, but it actually is more like walks, hikes, and maybe running up a hill here and there. It's kind of like a mixture. So yeah, when I think of it too, it's like, yeah, as a running coach, how do you inspire your clients if they don't have a race or they're training for something and it gets canceled and maybe they're bummed out about it? How do you kind of support them there and continue to motivate them on their goals?
Well, I think what's really interesting about being a coach is you really get to see what makes people tick. And for some people, they just shrug it off. They're just like, well, I'd be running anyway. Oh, it's great. I'm so fit. It really is like, okay, well, maybe we'll. And so for some people, we've done is like, okay, well, we don't need to be training for this really long ultra. Why don't we switch it? Let's do some speed blocks. Let's really work on bringing that, 5K time down or 10K time down. So we've switched it. For some people, they've needed a lot more support because I don't think they would have been running anywhere near what we would have been doing if they hadn't had that race motivating them. So we've maybe looked for other challenges or, I've just had to really handhold.
Yeah.
But I love seeing that's the interesting bit is what motivates people. Why are they running? And you really get such an insight into not just their running, into everything when you're their coach. So it has been
totally under pressure when shit hits the fan. It's like, how you acting? How are you going to show up? What is, and you get to see that a lot as a coach. And I think that's actually like my favorite part too. Like you said, super important. So as you said, you're not 100%. I mean, whoever is, but I know what you mean, where you're just like, I'm not going to push it. I know my body's still healing and working on something. So I know what you mean there, but what, nutritionally, you made some transitions, and how is that feeling for you? And you said you're working more on nutrition too. What does that look like? And how is that different than what you've done in the past? And how are you like experiencing the benefits of nutrition? Because I know it's so powerful.
It is. And I think, it's like the more I look into it, the more complex and the less I understand it feels. I mean, I think I was really unhealthy I think I was in like my 20s, and I was out drinking and partying and not really that conscious about what I was eating. And then since I kind of moved to the Peak District, and I've just had a much slower life. I haven't, I can't remember, I don't drink alcohol. I am vegan, although I wasn't vegan when I first started getting ill. So I'd say it was kind of pretty healthy. But yeah, it's been amazing working with this nutritionist. Like, I have been to other private doctors over the years and never really got anywhere. Some had some ideas that might help, but in the end, they were kind of dead ends. So working with this nutritionist is really great, because obviously she's looked at what I'm eating and she's happy with that. It's the reason, like, why isn't your body getting the nutrients that it needs from what you're eating? So a lot of it has been focused on gut health, which is a whole new area that I knew nothing about. And under the guidance of the nutritionist, I'm like gluten-free and caffeine-free, which was a bit more, which is a bit harder to give up my little coffees. But yeah, she's putting in loads of supplements. It's really fascinating. She's got a kind of biochemist background, but then she's now a functional nutritionist. So it's amazing. But with the gut health, it's just not, well, I knew anyway that problems that I were having, they're not going to change overnight. It's been years in the building. So I'm quite happy to take the long-term game and view of it. And with the gut health ones, yeah, it's been tough really, because she's been trying to, we've been trying to work out the bad stuff in my gut and kill that off. And then I've had a reaction with the toxins. So actually I felt worse for a lot of the time with the nutritionist, but I've come to the end of that. So hopefully we'll start to see some improvement soon. But it's just, isn't it amazing? Like, the human body.
Yes, it so is. And gut health is everything. I wanted to be like, talk dirty to me, like everything you're saying. I'm like, yes, because when I was going through issues hormonally with birth control and just like different foods that were just like messing with my gut. Yeah, it was really, really important for me to focus on gut health and the reparation of the damages of certain foods or whatever over time, and lifestyle and supplementation and working out all the time and all this stuff that I just had no clue. I was just like funneling like crap in my body, you know? And so I've just learned, yeah, our gut bacteria is so important. And then like supporting our liver and our detoxification organs, and like continuing to foster like the functionality of the processes of things, instead of like going in and wreaking havoc with all the convenience and extras and like just things we just, yeah, don't know. And so, and I think that no matter who you are, what lifestyle you live, or how, whatever, like gut health is so important. It's our second brain. And I'm sure you're learning so much about it from your nutritionist and who you're working with. And I learned a ton of that too. And it's just an avenue I continue to explore, because it's so, yeah, it's just like, it is so important, and it's a journey. So it's like, no, it's just not, got to be committed to the journey and the fun and learning about all the things that are happening and the gut bugs that live where and do what. And you're like, huh?
And even just the immune system, like me trying to work out, like read these books about the immune system. It's just, oh my gosh, it feels so complex.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's complex, but it's also empowering, because I feel like sometimes we're just like, I don't know what to do and I don't have the answers here. And there's actually oftentimes a lot of little things that we can do to foster and love on our bodies just a bit more, and not have to do so much, you know, more workouts, more this, more that. It's like, just kind of, you know, check in a little bit. So that's awesome. And I'm excited for your journey there. I know that for me, it was just like, and it still is, but when I first, you know, kind of was forced, you know, you get to a point where you're like, okay, other avenues are not working. And even now I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was like, yeah, I really need to like get back into some key protocols that I would normally do on a regular basis to support my gut. Because I felt like, yeah, stressful year. Yeah, just like different changes in diet and just like where I was eating and living and just whatever. So always continuing to check in there is so important. So important.
Yeah, and I think I was a bit of my problem before was that I'd read one thing, some little article, and just be like, oh yeah, this is going to fix it. Try that for like 2 days, nothing happened. I'd be like, oh no, something. I was kind of bouncing from one thing to another. So it's really good to have the support of a professional for what I need. And I put my trust in her, and we're kind of working through it together. So that's been really good, because I'm pretty sure, if I'd have found these supplements and these things on my own and started feeling worse, you'd just immediately give it up. But when you have somebody there explaining the process and explaining why you feel worse, and actually you can support your the detoxification with various foods or other supplements, it's been great.
Mm-hmm. So great. I'm so happy for you. What would you tell our listeners who I know that they like to run, they're hobby runners, and a lot of them do probably 10Ks to half marathons or so. What would you say to them if they're feeling like a little like, oh, what am I running for, racing for, or, things are getting canceled and I'm just kind of, feeling, kind of the feels from that. What would you say to them just to continue on their journey and not give up?
I think it's really connecting to kind of why you run. And for me, it's just, I love that being outside. I love the switching off. Sometimes I love switching music on and not having any, I can get so much out of running for so many reasons. And it's really just tapping into that time for other people and learning what makes them tick and what makes them want to run. And usually if you delve a bit, it's not really just the races. Sometimes it's not really the races at all. But that gives you a kind of structure to work towards. So I think just get out. We need to get out after the year that we've had. And I've really enjoyed just switching off, like not worrying about pace. Sometimes I don't even record my runs. Occasionally. I won't even record them. But otherwise, I just go out. I don't care. Like, a few years ago, I'd have been really embarrassed of putting some of my runs on Strava or social media, like, oh my God, they'll see how slow I am. Or, that just seems ridiculous now. I don't care at all. I just put it on here, had an amazing time. There you go.
Yeah. And just getting out there and moving. And I think too, what I like about races is like the community. And so I think as soon as we can even get in, sometimes even running groups, and I like to run alone too, but it's like sometimes, those races, they're fun. You meet up with friends that you see normally just at races or whatever. And maybe you meet from different places and stuff too. And so I like, for me, I feel like running buddies and people to kind of like get me going help a lot. Like, especially when I want to push further or like just kind of want to get up and go. Like if it's a beautiful day, of course, I'm just like not so inclined to be out and like go run. Like it would be like more walk, explore, kind of look around, like smelling the trees, like touching the, just kind of like looking around, getting dirty there too. And so I don't really feel like that motivation has declined. I just mean like sometimes you have your plan to go out and run and you're kind of like, working towards something, or maybe you had a plan for whatever. And it's just like, sometimes that motivation can be up and down, but I love what you said. You're like, okay, we'll get out and move when you want to, track it or don't track it. You might be slower than other times, but whatever, own it. And I like your attitude there. Is your running and yoga classes and coaching all online, or do you do it in person?
The running's all the running coaching's all online. So I work with my husband, who's been a running coach for 8 years, possibly.
Ever, yeah.
And it's all online. We just have schedules via an app, and we can, I do all my, FaceTime, Zoom, Skypes. So that's under White Edge Coaching. And there's a website there. And I'm always happy to do, like, the first call is always free. You don't have to sign up to anything, because I think it's really important with a running coach or with any coach that it's a mutual relationship, and you need to know that you're going to get on with that person. And I want to know that this person's right for me as well. So we always have a chat and get to know each other before there's any sign up. The yoga, my dream is to do the running and yoga retreats. At the moment I'm not doing yoga online. I'm doing it in person. So that's harder to find me because, again, we haven't been able to do any regular classes because of our lockdowns. But so that's best to keep in touch with me through my social media, and then I'll be letting people know when there's retreats coming up and any regular classes.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I can't wait for your running and yoga retreats. It's so much fun to bring people together like that. I'm so excited for you. So tell everyone your social media, and it was at White Edge. Will you say all of that one more time just so we can repeat it? And then I'll put it in the description.
It's White Edge Coaching.
Yeah.
And then the most social media that I use the most is Instagram, which is just Jen Scotney.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. You can find all of the links and all of the ways to connect with Jen for her running coaching and eventually her running and yoga retreats. I'll put all the links down in the description. And thank you, Jen, so much for being here. It was so great to catch up with you. I just wish you all the best on your journey. And it was such a blessing to have you.
Thank you so much. So nice to see you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. Hey, do me a favor. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us a review. This really helps a lot. And share this with a friend. I'm only one person, and with your help, we can really spread the message of self-love and sweat and change more lives all around the world. I'm London Souza, reminding you that you deserve a life full of passion, presence, and purpose, fueled by self-love and sweat. This podcast is a Hit Spot Austria production.